Welcome to another episode of On Lightness. Each month I'm talking to someone about lightness. This month we're talking for the first time with a photographer. His name is Michael Wesely. He's very known for his ultra-long exposure photography. So exposures that sometimes last 5 years or longer. And with these kind of images comes a lot of depth and weight, maybe also lightness. It was a pleasure to talk to him. He has a very unique perspective on topics like the time scale, thinking less in space but more in space-time, so like a spatio-temporal kind of view of our built environment. Yes, it's the first person I talked to who we could think of him as a specialist in the definition of lightness that concerns light more than space. But nonetheless, we also talked quite a bit about architecture. He is an architecture photographer. It was interesting the way our conversation was flowing. I felt very inspired. We were sitting outside in Berlin. It is sometimes a bit noisy. I'm sorry for that. That's it. Enjoy. Maybe because I forgot to ask you to introduce yourself. Maybe you can do that first. Like how you came to be who you are now.
Well, I'm an architecture enthusiast and mainly working in photography, but the works all I did in the last 30 years, they all developed through analyzing the camera. And so a camera is practically a room. Even if it's really small, like your telephone, it's still a room with a lens and a chip. Former was a film, now it's a chip. But the system is the same. There's a small dark room with a lens, and on the other side is the chip, the light sensitive analog or digital sensor. And I did a lot of works in the 90s tearing apart this room. Does the film has to be on the back wall? Can it be somewhere else? Does the aperture has to be round? Can it be something else? And does the exposure time has to be according to light conditions, or can I choose how long I want to expose things? So these questions led to a lot of works in the last 30 years that dialogue with this question. And beside this, I did a lot of research in archives about architecture. I made a big publication with my wife, with Nina Kim, about Brasilia, 500 pages book. You find in König, it's called Arquivo Brasilia. You find in König bookstores. And this Arquivo Brasilia book was a big research, and we had architects that helped us to structure the research in chapters about the different zones, the different scales of Brasilia. So I was more also interested in architecture, and this is why I'm doing a lot of dialogues with architects and architecture.
So I'm just gonna start with the first question, yeah? What is your perspective on the weight of our built environment?
This is the question also of your home, practically, where you are exposing yourself to urban structures and city space, urban space. And this is a crucial thing in Berlin, because Berlin has a lot of disrupted, dysfunctional urban spaces through all known historic circumstances. And lightness is not a big German thing. You don't find this much in Germany. Through climate change and engineering consequences from winter, heavy snow weights, possible snow weights. And the German environment is practically very heavy, the opposite of what you are looking for. But once there was lightness in architecture, practically with modernism, when modernism appeared, and especially Mies van der Rohe's Barcelona pavilion is absolutely light and delicate spaces floating into each other, and it creates a very good Raumklang sound, Klang. And this is something very beautiful, and you mainly find this in South America and Venezuela. The university in Caracas, for example, is also a very beautiful example of light and a bit of simplistic constructions in South America, definitely, and here in Germany I'm not so much into going to all environments checking for these qualities, but this is a very hard to find aspect of architecture that you think, this is very light or easy, because here everything's through climate conditions. The window frames became monsters. They are not small frames anymore. They are triple glass, and all this effort to save energy leads to something completely opposite of light. And so I don't see much Raumklang, something light, in terms of good floating energies, and very hard to find in Berlin. And also the effort in architecture to save energy becomes dramatically in terms of creating volumes, houses that are very heavy, not light at all.
Yeah. Okay. So my next question would be, what role weight plays in your profession?
There's a lot of weight in different scales, in different levels. When you talk about what weight is mainly, I'm connecting it more to time, effort. How much you put into something, the more weight meaningful. The weight in terms of meaning is one issue. So when you spend 2 weeks in a subject and then the other spends 2 years in the same subject, then it's definitely about weight and value. So how much you invest or evaluate a question or your own research.
Mm-hmm. No, that's interesting interpretation, definitely. Because then you would also think that with weight comes quality?
Maybe not necessarily, but when you look at the sumo fighters, then there is something about value, but then about weight, but then you realize that it's not all. So you need also creativity in your weight to win. It's not only that you're heavier than the other, but it helps, but does not make you automatically win. So there's also, just because you work for 2 years on a project does not mean that it's valuable, because maybe you asked for 2 years the wrong question. So there is about dialogues and influences and critique and how you shape your working process that make things valuable or more heavy, in the sense of that you create something that has definitely another weight than this small note on the table that will fly away with the next wind.
So would you say an exposure that you took for 2 years has more weight than one that you take for a day?
Yes and no, because the surprise is that when you take a 7-year-long photograph, which is really some sort of in a macrocosmos of photography, something sensational, but when you put it out, then it will be processed the same way than the other pictures. So there's no much difference in perception. because they think, okay, path, next one. No? So the constant flow of new images makes it something special, but in a way also something, okay, good, I saw it. And it depends a bit how you place yourself in the dialogue with the picture. No? But not necessarily a 5-year-long photograph is more important than. They all have other scales, other contexts of where this could be interesting.
But probably the camera has to be more stable if you want to expose for longer time, right?
But the relativity of time is something that also has to be considered. Look, I took 2-year photographs of the construction of Potsdamer Platz, but this was 20 years ago, and now these 2 years, they look like a click in history. Or think about the Third Reich, 33 to 45, 12 years. But now looking back is a a moment of history, of course, with a traumatic ending, but in fact is. Then when you look at the Untergang, where the last hours of Hitler are stretched into 2-hour movie, then you suddenly realize the relativity of time and scales and proportions. So this is also interesting to think about a 7-year photograph, which in some years will also look like he did a bit longer. Or it's a bit, but it's not so long. So there are all sort of qualities that you give, or your meaning that you give to something.
So it's not automatically more meaningful because it took more time. Yeah.
No, I mean, you can discuss this reconstruction of this Humboldt, the Prussian castle. You can discuss this in 1,000 pages book about reconstructing monuments. If it's a good idea or not, if the nation needs this, or Berlin needs this. There are thousands of pages written and thoughts spent on how to place this reconstruction. And my photograph is in fact 7-year exposure of this castle. But then you look at the picture and then you just see is something built, and it's there. So it reaches into fascinating dimensions of something supernatural and something super banal, also charged with the context of the whole thing. What did they do? Why did they rebuild it? And so this is a whole cultural context of nation, what a nation is doing to itself.
All right. Let's switch to a question that would consider your setup and what the lightest version of this setup would look like. Or if you ever think about your camera's weight, or how it would look like if you would have less weight, what would be the consequences of this?
Yeah, this happened in the last 10, 15 years when technology changed so much. Before the digital revolution into photography came, there was only big tripods, large format cameras, large film, everything slow. And of course, I was always wishing to be more flexible and do something like you have here with this tripod. But it took a whole 10, 15 years of development of photo technology, my own, how to transfer analog long exposure to digital long exposure. This is a whole process that took me 10 years to really do it. And now I'm in a position, I have a similar tripod than you, a small camera that has enough pixel to make really big prints, etc., etc. So the cameras were shrinking, the amount of pixels grew over time, and the tripods got better, and so I could really travel much more light than 10 years ago. Yeah. So I'm really happy about this.
Okay, so maybe we switch to lightness in the sense of luminance, of light. and start with a simple question of what role does light play in your profession?
And light is the key of everything in terms of what you can see and what you cannot see. And photography practically is created with light, time, and space. And space has different qualities. Light has a lot of different qualities, and light, time, and space. So you have a very long exposure, very short, and all in between. You have a neutral light, what the Blossfeld was using, and the Becher. So there's a neutral light, there's a very strong light, there's a whole range of light and light, time, and space aspects that can be combined to create a good photograph. And being aware of it is one of the things that photographers should consider. I'm not seeing this much anyway, but I have the impression the alphabet shrank. On a day like this, you can take certain pictures, but others you should not even think about taking it. Or you can always say, yeah, because I was there, I take it anyway. So there's a mixture between imposing your ego over the situation, or you say, oh, I'm just too late, I should have been here 1 hour ago, so I should come back next day and 1 hour earlier. So there's, and light makes a beautiful performance the whole day. If you are sensitive to it, it's fantastic. It's almost better than going to the movies. You have beautiful morning light situations and clouds and whatever, the whole range what nature gives to you in terms is fantastic. Yeah. And
projection
of leaves. But you have to make yourself a bit sensitive to that. Then it's a pleasure to walk outside. It's an extra quality of life when you understand. And when I was young, I did a lot of photographs in nature, and I had walks, always the same walks over years, and I know what time I have to leave to get this light and that light, and on the way to I get this light, and then on the way back I get that light. And there is a scenography of walking and experiencing, and this is what it is free. You don't have to pay for it. You just need someone that makes you sensitive to it. And this is definitely, once you have it, you can always explore more, and it's just very simple.
Yeah.
In this moment where the sun is parallel to a wall, you can see if the craftsman did a good job, for example. If it's where the mistakes of the wall and so on. So there are a lot of things. Light makes things visible, and this is a big quality you have to explore and use in photography.
Yeah, I wonder how your methods change when you have to catch not a certain moment, but all the light situations of a week, a month, a year, because that's sometimes what you do, right? You have to be, your machine has to be able to handle all light situations, right?
There is a setting which is always the same, and of course the light situations, they get a bit lost through when you have an all-day exposure. Then there is no shadow anymore, but there is also not a specific light that you would favor. For example, the street looks best at this time of the day, that it just disappears as something that disappears through the concept of the procedure. When you say I take a 10-hour photograph, then I know that this is irrelevant.
Yeah, it plays a different role. So, yeah.
It plays not the first role. But if you ask me as a photographer, when would you photograph Kolwitzstraße? I would say, there are special moments, especially in summer, around before 3 o'clock. You have the light on the east facades, and after you have light on the south facades. Yeah. So there is definitely and then when the light goes, you have a very beautiful definition of the frames, the windows, the bricks, the surfaces, and this would be the interest of an architect photographer. But when you say you're an artist that has the concept of getting time scales or time frames, then this aspect of light goes in second grade.
Yeah.
It disappears a bit off from what photography is usually about.
I my bachelor project was I kind of saw it as a camera space to it was like a little space made of walls that are just a net and rolls on the bottom, so it's around you and you can roll through the city and you get the projection of light on the walls, kind of. So to me, this comparison between space and camera, I had this sometimes in my head, so it's really interesting to also hear it from you. I just wonder what are all the shapes this space of the camera can take, you know? But I guess that is what you explored for a long time.
Yeah, I did a lot in the 90s when I came from a technical education in Munich photo school. That is, you only have two technically based photo schools. One is the Verein in Berlin, and the other doesn't exist anymore. This school in Munich, and there you get a really detailed technical education. And with this background, you understand the whole thing about camera, aperture, lens, and so on, etc. There, I collected all my knowledge and then transformed photography into different. I added some qualities to photography that were not explicitly drawn or used.
Mm-hmm. What would your photographic work look like if it was an architecture?
I think nowadays is more simple than years ago. The simulation of the sun, how the sun is walking in this location, you want to build something. So nowadays, I'm sure there's software that tells you, okay, in winter, the sun goes to that wall. In summer, the sun stays here. And I think everybody talks about sustainable architecture. And I think you have to catch most of the light, especially in Central Europe. And this is the contrary in Brazil. In Brazil, the buildings, they have small windows or only brisolets because people say there's too much sun anyway. I don't want sun in my apartment. Yeah? Because outside is so much sun and so bright that you need the difference, the contrast of being in a place where the sun is outside, stays outside. And here's the contrary. You always feel that there's not enough light. And you're always happy when you have big windows and get some more light that is not very common in Central Europe. Yeah? So we suffer from conditions that are about geography and climate. And so my house would... And I was thinking all these people in Mallorca, they're all having... many people in Mallorca, they built over the years, they built extension, they built winter garden. And had a ventilation that was blowing the warm air from the winter garden in the house, because they found out, cool. They found out that's really cool because I don't spend much heating. The air, the volume that is warmed up in my winter garden can heat my house. Yeah? So there is a bit of learning. And when we think about the last architecture biennale, like 2 years ago, it was the big bending down of nature and local constructions, because people were not stupid. So they learned from 2,000-3,000 years construction on their sites and villages and cities how to build the house. So it was more a sort of an intellectual revolution that we said, we are much better than the locals. They did something backdated. We know about good architecture. No? And yes, of course, good architecture also happened and it's happening. But it's also good to see how locals built and why they did this and that. So this was what I saw 2 years ago at the Architecture Biennale. A lot of doing this, how you call it?
A bow down.
Oh, you bow down to local conditions, how locals build houses. And so there is definitely my interest would always be to maximize or to use as much energy from the sun, solar panels in the right positions, and so on and so on. So it would be getting from nature what I can have for free. You don't have to buy it. This would be my approach in architecture. So also, and nowadays people are doing it already, collecting the water from the rain to flush the toilets and making separate circuits of water, circuits of energy, and so there is already understood that the world has not endless capacities on anything, not on oil, not on this, not on that, but what comes for free should be thought and used carefully. The sunlight, the water, or things like this.
That's nice. So you talked about this triangle of space, time, and light. And I wonder when in your career you found this connection through this technique of long time exposure, if there was a certain moment where you were like, this is it, or if it was a result of an experiment and then you understood, I could further develop this.
No, this happened, this understanding happened through analyzing the situation of photography when I was young. So I think every young person on this planet should analyze very careful what's happening, what's going on. Cannot be close your eyes from dynamics that are around you and how people do things, what's happening, why people are not talking, why is this happening. So if you stay open and question everything, then these questions, they show you where some things should be done. And I was extremely bored of an aggressive level that photography had in the 80s when I started my photo education. There was still the time where photographers could grab everything. There was also this explicit, very rough. Nowadays you would say very rough, but when you're in it, you can't really say if it was rough or not. No, men and women played a very rough game. No, it's like, oh hey Puppe, komm mal her, schicke Beine, let's take a picture. And the women, they also said, oh okay, so there was a dialogue in a certain time where it was in a way legal. I call it legal or nice or not so nice. Sensitive people would say, no, that's not nice. It's really offensive. When you think about respecting a woman, then you don't ask her, oh, you have a cool breast, can I take a picture? No, you don't do this. No? But it was time. Like, oh, sure. Wow, can you open one more button? Something like this. No? So there was excessive abuse going on in photography, and I thought, hey, that's really not cool. I'm not happy about it, but I'm starting to go into a world of photography. So you think, how do I place myself? So what do I do instead of doing this? So how can I transform something into something that's maybe more interesting? And in this aspect, I gave up this decisive moment. I went away from the moment, no, because photographers are always creating realities. There is no reality. Also, there is no reality. There's only your reality and the reality of all 8 other billion people on this planet. So everybody lives in his own reality that you create. It's not given. You create it. No? And in this sense, you create photographs. When I press now, the button, I create another reality of you than the second before or the half second before. No? So I create, and then I have to decide, is this the reality that I want to apply to you? And this made me question a lot of things. And then I also thought, yeah, this would be great if I turn this into something else. I take more than one moment. I take 300 seconds from you taking, or you giving me 300 seconds. So my portraits all take 5 minutes. And in this 5 minutes, it's quite obvious that there's no decisive moment. There's a collection of moments that shape a picture in the end that I consider is you. But I'm not telling you to sit still. I will tell you, if you want to sit still, you sit still. If you want to move, you move. So you can choose what you want. So I give some sort of a responsibility to you. So you writing yourself into the film. I'm not, in a way, of course, I open the shutter. I tell you when I open and when I close the shutter. But in this time, you are creating the picture of yourself. If you sit still, then you sit still. But if you want to talk to me or you want to move all the time, you do what you want to do. I'm not in this sense the choreographer or director. You are writing your own picture. And this turnaround of the system I quite enjoyed. And also the moment that I'm sitting with you for 5 minutes, there's a sort of a peace or quietness. And so there is many things change in this sense. I changed photography in the absolute essential parts. Well, there's no decisive moment, there's a time, and there's a different perception of space and light, of course. So there's a lot of things that change, and this was quite was feeling quite well, the same way you feel well with your light constructions. I feel well with this, that photography has other qualities that I can use. And this was one thing. So it was based on the decisive moment, the aggressivity of grabbing, taking a picture and take a picture. And that lead me to this different approach. And then I thought, okay, 5 minutes is a good time. Even now, 30 years ago, 5 minutes was okay to ask people. But interestingly, it's also nowadays, 30 years later, when you ask someone for 5 minute portraits, they all agree 5 minutes did not go into madness. But when you say you go for 5 weeks to vacation, 30 years ago, you'd say, oh, he goes for 5 weeks for vacation. But you say now you go for 5 weeks for vacation, people look at you as if you're mad or do something. Wow, what, 5 weeks vacation? How can you do this? So the times changed a bit, but then surprisingly, 5 minutes did not really change as something that you can give to someone.
And do you think you can already tell how the photo looks while you do it, since you have so much experience?
Of course. When someone is really moving a lot, then I know, okay, you won't see him. You only know through the title that this is this and that person. But mainly, of course, this is the challenging or the most exciting moment when the pictures are made in the computer.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I mean, what is the first priority if light is not the first priority in these super long exposures? Is it movement?
No, it's contemporary life. We are very in a big fluxus. No, we are very ephemeric creatures on this planet. We think we always try to establish something ourselves as a person, as identity, and meanwhile we are moving through time and life. We have experiences, we have challenges, we have disasters, traumas, all these things that are part of normal life, and then sometimes you meet someone who tells you to sit there for 5 minutes for a portrait, and then you take decisions how you present yourself, how you want to be seen maybe in the picture, and so there is also creates a media reflection of yourself. So some people, they have all sort of ideas how to be serious, how to be not visible or half visible, or they play with the idea of the 5 minutes. So there is a dynamics around this, and this is I accept that I'm not, in a way, I'm a creator and not creator. I'm a not creator because you create yourself. Or when I take the frame here now, and then this house is built. So of course I know that this is a construction time. Exposure time is according to the construction time, 2 years, and then I have the surprises. But you can imagine that you won't see the empty plot, the empty lot, but you also don't see the ready building, because not this and not the ready building are there for long enough to be visible. So there's something in between visible, and this in between, of course, has a lot to do with Antonioni, with Blow Up, with this movie that is very essential, where the guy zooms in and finds something, and the whole movie is based around imagination, projection, and this is something that is visible and not visible at the same time. Only indicated that there is might be something that is, in my perception, more fascinating than the real thing, like the mixture between whatever, maybe similar with. I mean, erotic photography practically died out because nowadays everything is about pornography. But the erotic had the shadow, and the shadow was that part where your imagination, the space for your imagination. And it's not only simple talking about sexuality, it's about much bigger. So if the shadow part is in photography mainly the part for imagination. So there is these long exposures, they have this big quality of indicating, or if you look very precise and you find some things that indicate something else. And this is my way of using photography in a poetic, call it poetic, it's a more poetic way.
Yeah, there's a lot of ambivalences, right?
Yeah.
Did you overexpose a lot of photos?
No, overexposing is not the problem. No, it's more that someone bumps against the camera or things like this. That very rarely happen.
Yeah. All right, let's switch to the philosophical part of lightness, the feeling of lightness. So I think we got a big chunk already that could be an answer to this question, but how did your work influence your perception of your environment? How did it change your perception over time, your work?
My work changed my perception.
That's the question, did it? Do you see time differently because you...
Yeah, but I don't know where this came from, but maybe it was always there that you are curious. I was always curious when you go into a room. I always was curious what was here before. So this because this space does not look like a restaurant. It looked like maybe it looks like an apartment, or it looks like something else. But some people have this question everywhere they are. They wonder why it's like this, why it's like that, and why is the street so wide, for example? No, there's one Oderberger Straße. It's very wide, and people asking since I'm doing my research, people ask me sometimes, why is Oderberger Straße so big street? And then I also did not know in the beginning, but in research you find out that there was a Mauerpark was a big train station, and that's just was an access route. So that's the simple reason why Oderberger Straße is that wide. No? So a lot of things, but this is was not your question. The thing is that looking at these long exposures, and looking for longer and thinking for longer, you realize many things. For example, that Potsdamer Platz was rebuilding or constructing of Potsdamer Platz is something that now looking back was just a moment. Yeah. And this time where the Potsdam Platz was broken is also just a moment. But what before was something else. So the time is very, it needs different scales of looking at it. This is very important. Tonight I'm giving a talk about my double-day pictures in Wasmut Publishing House. No? And this will be about how it looked here 45 and how it looks now. And then you think, wow, can't believe it. We are sitting here free to move. Of course, we have contemporary problems, but we also have traveled, our parents traveled through a crazy time that was, in looking back, was something like a good luck, super luck that we are now sitting here, that we can enjoy sitting here and doing whatever, culture and talking about architecture. And there is something about perception, and I think sometimes architects, they are missing a bit this part, especially when they build something like for example, when you build a university, then you have the blackboards, and then you think, I'm the genius, I'll make a new blackboard. Then I would say, okay, why don't you go take a tour through Germany and go to all universities and photograph all the blackboards? So you have a history of blackboards, no? Because this university was built in the 40s, in the 60s, in the 80s, and then you have blackboards from several generations, and you can find out, no, yes, maybe, well, good idea. That was not so good idea. That was a very bad idea. So this is a collecting. You're looking into time, different time scales, and how long these blackboards traveled already into a future that was not foreseen in those days. So time was teaching me a lot of things, looking at it, or even design. You know, when you have a new car, me as a car designer, I would say, okay, now shitty weather, you all go out and photograph our cars. I want to see them with all the dirt on it, if they're still looking good or not, or how can we change it that they look better. So there is a available accessibility of questioning time that is a bit underestimated, I would say. Yeah? Or you use a certain surface, and then but maybe not the architect, but some people know, hey, in 5 years this looked completely shit. Yeah, why are you using it? Because it was the cheapest, blah blah blah, whatever. No, I'm not blaming any architects for decisions, but it's something that where time is essential to look into a future of something that will be there for longer. And buildings are not erased like pictures on the wall. They're there for quite a long time. And of course, your own lifeline, your decisions that you make, this is all you can all place this in an upscaling process. For example, I made an exhibition with 100 Years Bauhaus, and the title was 1 to 100. And 1 to 100 is the scale that architects use a lot, but I did not use it in terms of space. I used it in terms of time. And then it turns into something completely else. I did a 1-year photograph in Barcelona of the pavilion, of the Mies van der Rohe pavilion, and then I mounted the picture in the pavilion, the 1-year photograph. But in a way that in the reflection, you could see yourself in the moment. So you're looking at different time scales. You look at the moment in the reflection and the 1 year in the photograph with the projection to 100 years. And then you think, how will it be in Barcelona in 100 years? Is there the same government? Will be the same respect to the pavilion, or did they already destroy it? Or did the water level raise that much that Barcelona is not existing anymore? Or whatever. So there's something unpredictable things happening in this 100 years. So there is a chance for upscaling, and also helps to understand life or whatever. Even your own relationship, when you have stress with your girlfriend and then you upscale this, say, okay, this will be like this for the next 50, 60 years. No, I cannot imagine. Why? Yeah, it's okay. It's all fine. If it goes like this, then I can see a future. So there is a lot of things where time and scaling helps. So not only about space.
Mm-hmm.
So time is a very, very important, very powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I mean, as architects in university, we do often have a lot of research about the plot that we're working on to find out what happened before. And this is often also one of the most interesting processes. So, but yeah, there's such a scale of how much you can think about time, how much you can use time as a tool for things, right? And I'm sure that being very aware of it helps in a lot of things, right? Not only in photography or architecture, because it's
this helps everywhere. So I mean, I'm surprised that sometimes you see sanitary people mounting a bathroom floor, and me as the owner, I would just throw a bucket of water, and then I will say, look, it's not all going down the drain. Huh? So in 2 years, I'll have a spot there because the water will stay there every time I shower. For example, just a mini example that, the first weeks, months, but then after 1 year, 2 years, you will say, hey, why couldn't they do this? So these little things, suddenly it's like this little stone in your foot, in your shoe. No? After 2 years, the same stone in your shoe makes your foot kaput. No? So it is, so there is also upscaling a little mistake into something horrendous after 1 year. So whatever. So many situations, they are based on projecting a situation into an upscaling process, and that makes it interesting to see if something will last or.
Yeah, it's interesting because you seem to have this view on your surroundings. For many people, you need these occurrences that really show time. Or like when you're in an old church in Italy, and the step of the stairs is like, that's a moment where everyone's like, wow, over time this changes, right? But in most moments, people don't really think about the scale of time.
Yeah. So there's something that would help a lot when people look at something with a future perspective. Yeah. But many people, only the moment counts, and that's just for now, But then, the watch the very expensive watch that you get as a present or you buy for yourself. I mean, nowadays you don't wear much, but it was a time where people had watches, And then you go somewhere and you forget it, you lose it, it gets stolen, whatever, and then you go, now I really need a watch. I just go to the Chinese market and buy the $5 watch, and then this $5 watch survives 30 years with you. Yeah, you don't understand why, but it's still with you, So there's also a very funny, positive, because you did not expect that this clock would last for and
Yeah.
But this. Whatever, the tree is planted too close to the house, then okay, there will always be water on this wall, always. And then it's not south where the water dries, it's north. Okay, so you'll have not only water, but you'll have moss and infiltration and So it's a bit of imagination. Then you think that over time this tree will be removed, because it's really not working.
But sometimes also this idea calms you down. If you think about things that annoy you at the moment, you're like, okay, with time this will go away.
Like this is the hope, of course. You always carry hopes with you that you think, this will pass, or can this pass quietly, or not, or needs a treatment anyway. So there's always applying questions, things, with situations.
Really interesting. I have one question about if there was moments in your career or life where you were like, this right now, this is really significant, or this is really exactly what I want to do. Do you remember certain moments where this happened to you?
Yeah, I was trying to reach 1 year exposure time. This was one thing where I thought, okay, I did 5 minutes, I did 20 minutes, and where this goes, can it be 1 year? And this was a moment where I had to buy a camera that I did not use or was in use for 1 year, and I could not use it, but I had to buy one anyway, to be there for 1 year in a place. So this was a decision to, and has consequences, because then you need the same film, you need the same emulsion from this film to be in your fridge, to always access the same material, and so on. So that suddenly you has consequences in the approach. That 1 year photograph does not come with a click. It comes over 1.5, 2 year. And this is something called consequence, where you realize, if I go this way, then I have to. And this may is something for younger people that you need to be very hard to yourself. You can't say, I do a bit of this and I do a bit of that, because a bit of this, everybody's doing a bit of this and that now. But to be an expert is something that is a very rough and tough decision, because then if I really gonna do whatever mountain climbing, then I have to do this and this and this, and I cannot do this and this, and I have to buy the shoes and not. It's a whole consequence of thoughts and decisions.
So you feel like you decided to become an expert?
Yeah, it's much better than anything else, because I always tell students the only chance is to be an expert, because you have to be the one that drives, not this is driven. You have to want to say, yeah, this is possible, this is not possible. I know that this works this way and that way, and people who are no experts, they are extremely vulnerable to wrong decisions, to wrongdoings, to wasting money, getting bankrupt, etc. So there is definitely super important to be an expert. And if you want to have a company and you're not an expert, then you lose already, because anybody will understand that they can trick you any moment. So the only chance is to be better than your employees. Or when your employee is better than you, then things gets out of. So that's super important to be an expert. Absolute. The less expert, the bigger chance that you fail in anything.
Yeah, it's architects are often not experts. They are often generalists in the way that they understand a bit of all the professions that they have to deal with, and they become this communicator,
Yeah, they do Scrabble and then they give to the engineers and you resolve it, something like this. But when you studied engineering and then architecture, then you already exclude things, and then you say, who blocks whom now? The intellect blocks the creativity, or the creativity challenges the engineering. So there is a mixture between both things. It's not only bad that you're not a trained engineer, but it can save you a lot of time when you have an understanding of engineering, that your roof or your whatever is not working. Instead of biting yourself into an idea that will not happen, is maybe different than, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
but then you said if you decided to do a 1 year exposure, and it had consequences because you did it for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And then you had to be at the place the whole time?
No, of course not. But you only have to,
like, maintenance, kind of.
Not really, but of course, before you do a 1 year photograph, you do a 6 months photograph. You do a 3 months, and so it all breaks down to a 1 day, 2 days, experiment, no? And this experiment you have to do always with the same film, and so this is a bigger setup than normal photography, you know.
It's scientific in a way, no?
Yeah.
It's like scientific work.
Yeah.
Experiment.
Basic empirismus, because the 1 year photograph can only be tested. It cannot be calculated. And that's why nobody else is doing it, because everybody knows that this is only can be reached through experiment. Huh?
And you quit the analog photography in a way? You switched to digital?
I'm still using, but not that much anymore.
Okay. So one big epiphany was this decision. You're going to be an expert in this. I'm going to do this 1 year exposure.
Yeah, and then you do a bit longer. You do 2 years, and here maybe 4 years. So this also happened in this whole process, no? But
and there's also a decision. This is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, of course, and then this is about being consequent. I think many people know about, I should do, if I do this, then I also should think about this, no? So I'm doing this work now that you see in Wasmut Publishing House tonight. This was a consequence from a line of work that I followed over the last years, and I questioned these works, and then as a consequence I ended up doing this work about 80 years end of the war. Did not happen with the idea, I have to do something because now it's 80 years of the end of the war, blah, blah, blah. I will do a work on it. No, it happened on the contrary, that I investigated urban space in Berlin and went through a lot of archives, found a lot of old historic pictures of Berlin, which made me understand where the urban space came from. And then, of course, you find pictures of the bombed Berlin 45, 46. Yeah? So in my research, I had a lot of pictures from before the war and after the war. And of course, at the end of the war, there was a bunch of pictures. And then you think, okay. And then you think, end of the war. I have it. So it was a collateral damage from my research that I collected a lot of pictures about the end of the war and today. So this sometimes you end up in places where you don't even thought that your work would bring you to. No, you will have the same thing. You do a research and then suddenly you end up and they think, okay. Or no. And so there are decisions also. I could just also not have done it. But I'm 60 now, 61. And for me, this 80 years end of the war also has a sort of a reflection on my time on this planet. I'm 60 years on this planet now. And what happened? My parents, they were refugees from the war, and they settled, they built a house, and the street that was rubble turned into asphalt and more houses. So I grew up, I'm part of this baby boomer generation and with a certain consequences. And so I'm also, in a way, have a sort of a personal interest looking back. Where we came from. Okay, we came from there. So, where we came from, what was this space, what was this before, where I am, what is this, what was it? So these are maybe essential question of curious people. No?
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Very interesting. Very inspiring.